Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and Iman here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Rovi, and MScribe, and today we got a interesting CBRC20 token deploy.
You butchered that a little bit.
Yeah, CBRC20.
There you go. The addition of that extra C is
it's
really,
kind of jarring.
It's just
jarring
twists the tongue a bit, right? CBRC.
Yeah,
it's kind of like CBDC. Wait, CBD.
Yeah, CBDC.
CBDs. I don't know, but CBRC. I don't even know what the C stand for. I guess Cyborg is like the official name of this creator, the official pseudonym, I guess, of the creator of this new token standard. Dude, what do you know? Yeah. Another token standard to talk about.
Yeah, and I think you put it best. So this attacks a certain points in like the ecosystem right now.
Yeah.
Right. We have Unisat forking and freezing.
Yes, which these are all major topics that I guess we're going to
be talking about
over this next week.
Yeah,
because I guess this is the perfect time to do that. You know, BRC20 market it's kind of like settled a bit.
Right.
You know, we had massive runs with Track and obviously Ordi crossed the $1 billion threshold in that market cap, and then you have all these other micro caps emerging with the rats and the bats and the grats. I don't even know what else. You know, it's just been going crazy, you know. So market's calming down a bit. Fees are returning back to the norm. And now there's some big issues afoot. Yeah. Right. And we haven't really talked about them yet, but we're going to be doing that over the next few days.
Yeah. So this was addressing the fork and freeze by Unisat and friends.
Okay, that's one.
Right. And the other
and friends.
The other target point here is ocean mining. Trying to prune or minimize ordinal transactions.
I think we did talk about that a little bit last week. Yeah, I think we did. So this is one that's been on the, I guess, radar of a lot of people.
Yeah, I think we need to go deeper. I don't think we went that deep because we're still getting pinged. From a lot of people to talk about it.
That's true. I think we mentioned it in our last Ordinal takeover as ocean mining. There was a lot of speculation leading up to that.
You're right. We did talk about it.
Yeah, there was speculation leading up to it that potentially like some inscription censorship is afoot.
Yeah, and in that video we said that, it's being censored, and then, no, never mind, it's not.
Because they were like, might a bitmap or something like that.
And then literally the next day is like, it's being censored.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's the new update, right? There is some fuckery afoot, right, amongst these new miners.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, they obviously have a very specific ideology around Bitcoin, and they want to maintain that ethos of like, this is just a money transfer layer. Nothing else.
Only. Yeah. No pictures, no JSON data. It's just money.
Correct. Anything outside the scope of that utility, that is considered spam to the network. Right. So
according to the few.
That ideology.
Right.
And now let's assume they're not alone.
Yes. Sure.
Right. There's a tranche of participants in the Bitcoin network that also align with these principles, right? So people are taking action, specifically miners.
Speaking of action. Cyborg chimes in.
Yeah.
He enters the chat. And he says the first CBRC20 token deploy is board was inscribed directly on the HTML of the CBRC20 convention. And so you have the first token called BORD, board, and it's the introduction of an efficient meta protocol standard for fungible tokens on Bitcoin through ordinals by utilizing the 1.0 Jubilee update that should be dropping here in about 4,000 blocks or so, which is about 30 days.
20 to 30 days.
Yeah.
I guess very early next year.
Yeah.
Right. So it's coming soon. It's definitely on the horizon. The ecosystem's kind of preparing for such.
Yeah. So let's talk about what this is exactly. So this is like a BRC20, very similar.
Yeah.
Except because it's utilizing the 1.0 update, the Jubilee update that's about to release, it puts all the JSON data, instead of a JSON data, it uses the metadata field of this 1.0 update and puts all that information within the metadata field in using seabore, which is like a let me kind of outline what this is. seabore is a concise binary object representation, which is a data format whose design goals include the possibility of extremely small code size.
Okay.
So this is an internet, standard called seabore, and it's just it's like JSON except extremely
compressed,
very smaller packets.
which is important, right? For, I guess digital efficiencies and such.
Oh, yeah.
When you're designing, architecting, I guess systems, you want the most efficient design.
Yeah.
As optimized as possible, right? So compression is typically.
And here's a good example of that. So Cyborg comes in with another tweet. He says 40 bytes for CBRC20 deploy versus 94 bytes for BRC20 deploy. Harder, better, faster, and stronger. So this is a big deal because the ocean mining, which is trying to eliminate ordinals, the way they do that is by selecting a size limit. Okay. And if you're beyond that size limit, it just ignores it.
Wow.
Right. And if you're below that size limit, it doesn't ignore it.
It basically, you're considered as like business as usual, operations that are not deemed a threat.
Yeah. Right.
So I guess Cyborg is kind of like taking on this news, or I guess this new potential vector of attack against, ordinals and inscriptions. Like, all right, we got to figure out a compression mechanism. Hey, what do you know? There's this new update on the horizon that now we can do that. We can leverage the feature set.
That's right.
Of the 1.0 update, right?
Yeah.
But because you've outlined this new narrative in the air, this freeze, potential Unisat freeze, right? Where we don't want to adopt anything beyond what we already have.
Yeah.
As far as like an ordinals client, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the freeze comes from Unisat and friends, and they're deciding they decided to fork and then freeze beyond any ordinals update. So it's stuck on 0.9.
Right.
And we're about to release 1.0, right, with like new functionalities like metadata, child parent inscriptions, things like that.
So basically, you would not be able to do this.
You won't be able to.
There is no metadata field yet.
Correct.
Officially until the Jubilee, which is in a few weeks. So it's interesting, dude. It's like this. So it has all the native functionalities of a BRC20 token. You got your ticker, your 4-character,
the limits.
You got your limits, your max supply,
the deploy inscription as well.
Correct. So it's all there. We're gonna still be able to, I guess, fulfill our BRC20 degeneracy under a new label. I guess it's called CBRC20.
Yeah.
Close enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But so how is Unisat even able to like kind of like hijack BRC20s in the first place? Like, well, are they actually doing that? Is there just like they're just kind of like setting their own fork in the road? Kind of like how Bitcoin Cash back in the day with Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, we just think Bitcoin would operate much more efficiently under this design.
Yeah.
So we're going to fork what Bitcoin is.
I think they have an architecture, and I think we're going to go deeper into this subject, but they have an architecture of modules. So it's a freeze, but I think they support new functionalities with these modules. And again, we'll go deeper in a different, separate video because we want to stick with Cyborg and CBRC20s here.
Yeah.
But yeah, just watch our next video talking about, the intricacies of like why this freeze is important, how it could be a threat.
Okay.
And the result of what everybody's doing, including Benny and Track.
Yeah, because Benny's putting out new proposals, right? Okay, if we're going to have these like these forks, now we're having like separate versions of ordinals, right? Mm-hmm. They could all be labeled under the same thing.
That's right.
Like from my perspective, an indexer.
Yep.
I'm now confused.
That's right.
Like what I see is now super cloudy.
Now everybody sees differently, right? Different things.
Yeah, well, it looks like we're all seeing the same thing, but really they operate and they function differently.
That's right.
And there's nothing really to tell me that as such. So I was like, Benny's like, you know what? If you're going to do this, or if we're going to do this as an ecosystem, we better at least put some labels on these different like variations of ordinals.
Yeah, he's absolutely right.
Right. So he's suggesting basically eras is what he calls them, right?
That's right. So that we're going to talk about that in another video.
Yes. So we got a lot of shit to talk about.
Yeah, indeed. All right, and just to kind of paint the picture, so here's Cyborg. He's saying CBRC20 fixes this. The CBRC20 melts the ORD 0.9 freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is quoting Benny's tweet here. All right.
So this is getting a lot of traction.
Yeah.
It's hit our radar because we're seeing it all over Twitter. Some big names out there are talking about it. You got Trevor. Mm-hmm. Because this is we have new fodder now to kind of like poke back at these miners who are trying to, in opposition with what's happening in this space.
For good reason too, because these miners are saying that ordinals is spam.
Right.
And if you're a huge ordinal fan, this is far from spam.
Correct. Yeah.
Like it's different. You know, spamming is a very specific goal, right? It's to take down a network, so you spam it, right? It's like a DDoS attack, right? And so none of us, like you and I, I guess we speak for ourselves. We're not trying to spam the network. We're creating stuff.
Yeah, I think they're using that term spam just as like it's a tactic in itself, is to build up this counter narrative to what's happening. That way people who are kind of like on the outside looking in, they don't have to do too much due diligence beyond just that narrative itself. It's like, look, you don't have to actually understand what's happening. Just know all these transactions are coming in that are clogging the network, and it's hurting your Bitcoin.
So someone who's not paying attention, they see the headlines, it's like, oh, Bitcoin's getting spammed. Oh, okay.
I'm in support of censoring that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's buffer all that spam.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, that's as far as I need to read. Let me go move on with my other boomer activities. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a smart move to call everything spam. It's a shortcut to like just shut everyone's brain off.
Yeah.
To like investigate further.
So of course the community, you know, Trevor, Leonidas, CB Spears.
CB Spears,
yeah, they're all fighting back, and they're saying, "Hey, look at what Cyborg did. Now try to prune this, right?"
Pretty much, yeah. So it's right. It's some sort of like weird, just like multiple fronts of like war happening in this space. You got this little war, then you got like the token protocol wars itself.
Yeah,
indexing issues and such. There's a lot of friction at the moment. Hopefully, this doesn't like slip out of control anytime soon.
Yeah.
Or maybe for like from Elon's perspective, the most entertainment outcome is the most likely.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Maybe it is supposed to go down like this.
I think so too.
Like a lot of friction.
Yeah. And so right now we're also looking at the documentation for CBRC20.
Definitely recommend going through all of this.
It's actually a pretty good read. It is interesting how this guy decided to put this data in like the meta protocol field with this 1.0 update that's about to drop.
Yeah.
And it does make the transaction sizes significantly smaller.
Yeah.
And so less likely for a miner to kind of like weed out based on size.
Yeah.
And so basically you could create your own token. Tokens have been created. CBRC20 was one. Board was the first one.
Yeah, and you know how like
completely minted out in 2 hours.
2 hours. You know how like the ethos of like, you know, the degens of today. You know, hey, new token protocol, like first is usually deemed most valuable, just because it's typically regarded as like the benchmark, you know, representation of the overall token ecosystem, right? So there's a lot of value in that. Right?
Yes,
it's first.
Yes,
we like first things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one minted out pretty quickly. I think it's already trading over the counter. Obviously, very risky.
Yeah,
nobody's advocating to go into the Discord and like
Definitely
start
not.
Buying these things, but people are doing that.
Definitely not. Yeah,
and they're paying pretty handsome premiums to those minting costs because of that. Again, that degen philosophy.
Right.
But there's other tokens out there too, and there's actually dashboards out. So we got the beginnings of a new, ecosystem here.
Yeah, and if you guys don't want to read a spec, which can get a little bit technical, there's some background here. There's another article here that breaks it down as well by Ordinal Hub.
Yeah, that's CB Spears himself. So yeah, that's a very good breakdown. There's a lot, man. There's a lot happening at once. It can be overwhelming. We learned that ourselves whenever we released our DMT documentation.
Yeah,
we saw the confusion we put out there.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like happening all over again. Now people are going to be confused. It's like, what's wrong with BRC20s? What do you mean just Unisat freeze? Like, yeah. So that's our responsibility. Is kind of like understand it ourselves so we can relay to you what's happening.
That's right. Yeah, and then in the Ordinal Theory Handbook, there's this section called metadata, which is part of like how these CBRC20s are taking advantage of this
yeah, and
area.
You're saying because this is like one of the nice enhancement features of the 1.0, and now it's a standard, right? And all indexers are going to respect this. And
yeah, there's no way that you're going to create something off of like a very simple idea. I wouldn't call it simple, but a very basic idea like ordinals, and you're going to come up with a fungible token standard off of a foundational premise, and like that's going to be the most useful form of that fungible token.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't make any sense. That's why things get updates.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so just like the Ordinal client getting an update and adding metadata in a formalized, structured way, people are going to take advantage of it, and they're going to create stuff out of it. And this guy created fungible tokens off of this metadata.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you would expect.
Yeah, and it's so that's I think adds to why I think it's getting a lot of traction so quickly and support, just because it is a good like showcase of why metadata is a good value add
and why updates are value adds.
Correct. Yeah. Now you have efficiency improvements and such. It's got to be, the protocol has to be living, right?
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
We see this, obviously there's going to be major contention moving forward. That's why I think, Casey and friends, they took their time, I guess, getting to the state where they want to officially proclaim this is like the 1.0 release of Ordinals, a whole year, basically.
Yeah, whole year.
Whole year of testnet. And we've all been just like fucking around and trying to break things.
Yeah.
Which we kind of have, in a sense.
Yeah.
To kind of like really like iron out like what is the best version of Ordinals we could put out there for the world to kind of like, utilize and digest. So we're there. We're like literally a few weeks away from that.
That's right.
And I think moving forward, any of these new upgrades or updates is going to be much more contentious and much more of like a lengthy, probably some like governance process involved. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's part of the whole experiment, right? So nonetheless, this is a good showcase, like I said, of a new ecosystem emerging utilizing the new feature set.
Mm-hmm.
And it's solving a lot of problems already.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking at a Dune Analytics dashboard here, and board, which was the first token in this new protocol, has an 118% completely minted out. So this means that some of the mints, I guess, weren't to spec, or maybe they came in too late, and it's over minted. So these are just going to be ignored, right? Once everything gets fully indexed.
Correct. So yeah, if you happen to come before that 100% mark, you officially claimed your portion of the supply of the board token, which is basically the ordi for this, new token standard. So it's interesting there. We weren't there, unfortunately, for the very, very, very beginnings of BRC20 when Domo deployed the protocol, but we were pretty close, maybe like a few weeks after that fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're sitting here watching the very beginnings of a new one, dude. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
and
obviously
there's other ones, right? Frog, CBRC,
correct.
Pepe, and Junk.
Of course, you're going to see thousands of these things
right.
within a few days.
Yeah.
Just like we see on BRC20s. There's already like tens of thousands of those, I think. Probably. Not all of them have value.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, only like a few handful of them have any actual market value to them. But here we go again, dude.
Yeah.
Another token ecosystem to kind of keep our eyes on and, see what developers, who's going to gravitate to this specific arena.
Yeah, I like this because it's leveraging, the new updates on the 1.0. And that's the whole point. It's like Bitmap's going to be leveraging this 1.0 updates, NATs, obviously, with parent-child inscriptions, things like that.
Yeah. So
this is an important update, and this is like the full 1.0 release of Ordinals, right? So it's time, to see people actually leveraging it.
So what do you think about the future for BRC20, dude? Is it dead?
That's a great question, dude.
I think that is the question I think we have to explore as a community, I guess.
I don't know if it's dead. I think it's like a point in time, like historical point in time, which has its like artifacts.
Its own value.
Yeah, it's its own value, yeah. I don't know if it's, exactly utility-based tokens, right? These are more like just artifacts.
History.
Yeah, history.
Historical value to it and such.
Yeah.
Like you're probably going to see like the fungible tokens of the future, which probably will come from protocols that are much more like
robust, functional.
Yeah, they're willing to adapt.
Yeah.
To the changes of the time, right?
Yeah.
That's probably going to be what underpins a lot of like the actual financial systems. If a financial system does develop on top of Bitcoin, like we saw on Ethereum, which I think is like the golden goose scenario, if we could build a real DeFi on Bitcoin,
100%.
It's going to have to come from a much more robust fungible token
ecosystem.
So likely candidate is either something we're seeing with CBRC20 or maybe something that comes down the road.
Yeah.
Maybe it's TAP. Yeah. Some other fucking crazy Frankenstein version of all these tokens. I don't know. But it's unlikely to come from
the first iteration of fungible tokens.
Yeah, it's something that wants to kind of like stay that primitive.
Yeah.
Through whatever forces that, make that come about. So.
Agreed.
It's very weird. a weird space, dude.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's it for us. If you have any questions on CBRC20s, let us know in the comment section below. Stay tuned. There's going to be NAT indexing update pretty
big
soon.
one. Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about the freeze. We're going to be talking about the censoring, I guess, in the next couple of videos. So
yeah,
stay tuned for that as well. Appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.